can't believe you two took that raving lunatic seriously. What do you think this is?
Hi everyone, for lack of knowledge. And today I'm going to address another tough Bible question. The answers that I give are not the only interpretation of the information. It's just the findings that I've come to in my own opinion on the topic. If you've looked at any of my other tough Bible question videos, you'll know that I'm not one to shy away from these tough questions, even some that are debated within the church. I think it's good that we have open discussion about these and try to come to some type of agreement or understanding lovingly with each other. This being said, I want to address the idea of a modern day apostle. Now, if you look at some titles that are used within the church, I'm actually one that is not very legalistic, but I don't even use the term reverend for individuals. Now, I know we're saved through grace, by faith. And so that's why I lean away from being critical of people and being judgmental. I have no problem with anyone using any title that they deem fit. I'm not one to judge. I just don't use certain titles. Since I've come into the understanding that reverend, which is very commonly used in the Christian church, is a term that was only used one time in Scripture, I've leaned away from calling people that. I'll call them pastor, minister, or any other title that is given in Scripture. But if you look at Psalm 111, verse 9, at the end of it, it states, "And reverend is his name." So this is clearly a reference to God himself, and it is the only place in Scripture that this word is used. And so I just have a personal issue with applying a term that was used one time solely in reference to God, and then applying that to spiritual things like a spiritual leader within the church. That's just my personal opinion. Some people agree with it, some people don't. That's just the perspective that I approach it from. Now, if you look at things like the term apostle, there's the fivefold ministry in Scripture. It's given unto some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, and some teachers. Now, in addition to this, we see in Scripture where it states that there are bishops and deacons. And of course, you can use the basic term minister as well. But the term apostle all throughout Scripture is used in reference to those that were hand-selected by God. And the number that was always applied to it was 12. Now, if you look in Matthew 10 and 2, it says the names of the 12 apostles are these. Luke 6 and 13. He called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles. Luke 22:14. And when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him. And so we can go on, and there's several other instances like that, but I'm just building a framework for my discussion. If you look at the idea of apostles in general, sometimes there's even a misconception about that. Many people may not realize that there's actually 14 apostles. There were the 12 that were hand-selected by Jesus Christ, and then there were 2 extras. But yet these 2 extras were also selected by God himself. Because if we look at the fact that there were 11 after Judas killed himself, after he betrayed Jesus Christ, in the very beginning of the book of Acts, you have the apostles gathering together, they're convening, and they're looking to replace him. There was 2 in the running. There was Justus and there was Matthias. Now, the lot fell to Matthias and he replaced Judas, and it says he was numbered among the 11 to make 12 again. But even in Matthias, he was selected by God, because if you look in the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 20, it actually states of a prophecy in the book of Psalms, which is Old Testament, where it states that let his habitation be desolate and let no man dwell therein, and let another take his bishopric. So it was speaking of Matthias replacing Judas. And we know prophecy is given by God. So God foreknew and foreselected Matthias replacing him. Therefore, Matthias was chosen by God. And of course, we know of Paul, one of the most prolific of apostles, who was called by Jesus Christ himself as well. Although he was not called through Jesus Christ in his life before resurrection, after Jesus Christ's resurrection, he was selected by Christ personally on the road to Damascus. So this understandably makes the number of total apostles at 14. But I've heard the discussion about there being modern day apostles, and some people have said that, well, if you take the gospel and go and start a church somewhere, that you're called an apostle. I respectfully disagree with this because of the idea that Scripture set the precedent that there were only 12. Every single time there's a number given, it is 12, and they were hand selected by Jesus Christ. I almost feel as if some of these titles that we give ourselves in the modern day church are an example in Scripture of a man giving themselves an exalted name or an exalted title. That's just my personal opinion on it, but it is founded in Scripture. Now, an apostle, being someone finding a church or founding a church, cannot really be applied to the modern day. If you look at those that take the gospel into places that are completely remote and possibly have not yet heard the gospel of Jesus Christ, like in the jungles of the Amazon or in the jungles of Africa or Asia or some of these places that are very remote away from civilization, these individuals go by the name of missionary. So that is not a title that they carry with them. They're missionaries. And then if you look at the title of an evangelist, this would fit very well into the modern day places like America, other westernized societies, where the gospel is just preached to those that may not be believers. It's taken to them in a land that the gospel has been preached within the land, but to still put forth the gospel in a way that can be understood by non-believers. That individual would carry the title of an evangelist, to take the gospel forth. The only thing that distinguished the other followers of Christ who were his disciples, which we all are, but the only thing that distinguished his disciples from the apostles were that scripturally, they were all hand selected by Jesus Christ himself. Now, I'll end this discussion by putting something forth that is very rational and makes sense. If you look with me in Revelation 21 and 14, this simply states, "And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb." I'm going to end here because Revelation is the end. This is the revelation of the future. The book of Revelation is a prophecy. And so it foretells the very end, and that there was 12 names written in the foundations of the city of God that John saw. The foundations of Zion had 12 names written in them, and it was the 12 names of the apostles of the Lamb. It does not address there being thousands and thousands of other apostles, and nowhere in Scripture do we see a precedent for that set. Now, leave comments, share this, give it a like, subscribe. I'm open to discussion on this topic as well. I hope you guys have had a blessed day. Take care, and let's not be destroyed for lack of knowledge.